All right, welcome to this week's episode of FACish. I'd like to thank you for tuning in as we get ready to wrap up Legislative Committee Week number 2. Let's start with a roll call. First, our special host, our special guest, Eric Poole.
Thank you, Davin. Thank you for having me. I didn't know you built a studio out. This is wonderful.
This is Studio 67.
That's wonderful. Thank you for having me, and I'll try to interject.
And can you add something to?
Yeah.
All right, thank you. All right. Next, we have Sarah's with us today. Sarah, how you doing?
I'm good, Davin. I'm Sarah. I'm the policy analyst, and my email is shenley@florida-counties.com if you ever need me.
Right, and we're going to get a t-shirt that says Sarah, the policy analyst, like in quotes. That's awesome. Jeff, you used to be a policy analyst. Who are you now?
I am handling environment, water, energy, and emerging issues in technology. And my email is jscala@flcounties.com.
All right, you almost forgot the .com. You were thinking about it. Tonette, good afternoon. Happy Friday. How you doing?
Good afternoon, sir. I'm well. Tonette Graham, tgraham@fl-counties.com. I cover all things healthcare, public safety, justice, and COVID.
All right. Glad to have you. Tiffany, how you doing today?
Hey, I'm doing good. Well, hey, everybody. I am Tiffany Henderson. I am the Senior Public Policy Coordinator for FAC, and my email address is thenderson@fl-counties.com.
Eric, I got a tough decision here. I got 2 people left. I don't know who to call on first. I think who performed better? Did Eddie or Bob perform better this week?
I'd like to stay in their good graces, so you make the choice.
All right, I'm going with Eddie. It wasn't even close. Eddie, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. Welcome to Friday. Eddie Labrador. I am the Senior Legislative Counsel. I advise the public policy team on legal matters. I cover community and urban affairs, amongst other issues.
And how many more times were you right than the Deputy Director of Public Policy this week? I'm counting at least like 3 or 4 times.
I think I was I didn't have any bad opinions. I'll tell you.
And last but not least, my man, Bob with 2 B's. There's one on the front and the end. How you doing, Bob?
I'm doing all right today. I dispute the earlier comment. I am Bob McKee. I handle finance, tax, and appropriations issues for the association. My email address is bmckee@fl-counties.com. And I'm a split personality, being both a certified public accountant and an economist.
Man, and almost a lawyer. You're almost a pretty good lawyer. I mean, if you
No. There's a bar between me and the practice of law.
Man, I got that. I'm not slow. I picked up. Did you pick up on that?
Yes.
All right, let's go. Opening whip around. Just 10 words or less, guys, about this week. I'm going to hand it to our co-host, our special guest co-host, Eric. This week, for you, 10 words or less. Reflections.
Well, at the legislature, I get to sit back and watch part of what's going on without actually having to engage, but I found some of the legislation introduced to be similar to what we've seen in the past. You have people pushing legislation for reasons that are not clear, and it'll take us a couple of weeks to figure out what the real motivation on some of these bills are. And we can talk about those a little bit later.
Yeah, smoke screens. We like that. All right, I'm jumping to Tonette. Reflections on this week.
Can you stay in order next time?
I'm mixing it up.
No. Reflections on this week, I would definitely have to say it was a optimistic challenge. If this week has set the tone for what session is going to look like, I'm cautiously excited, but going to enjoy the roller coaster ride and see what it brings.
Yeah, I'm excited if people are going to be dropping F-bombs at the podium every day.
Listen.
It's going to be very entertaining. So,
Entertainment.
Eddie, how about this week for you?
Well, if I had one word to describe this week, I would say controversial. There were several bills which created a lot of controversy in committee. A lot of people speaking against these controversial bills. Controversy is the word of the day.
Okay. Tiffany, how about you?
Well, I had a good week. I guess, broadband, I've heard a lot of good things this week. DEO started, I'll talk about it a little later, but DEO has started their workshops. Director Eagle presented before a House committee. And I heard from Bob and Jeff that broadband got a little money in the budget. So it's been a good week.
You're doing all
for
right.
broadband.
All right. Somebody has shown Tiffany the money. It's a good job, Tiff. Jeff, you're going to have to wait because I'm going to Sarah. Sarah, what you got this week?
I would say a little chaotic with HB1, but slightly more organized than last week.
All right. So we're getting hot. And how are you, being a newbie, you getting the hang of things?
Yeah, I'm getting the hang of things.
All right.
Slowing in there, but...
Is anybody being mean to you? There's no hazing going on there.
Not so far, but we'll see. We'll see into the future.
All right, we have a forum for that. We got a forum. All right, I think I got Jeff and Bob left. I'm going with Bob. Bob.
All right. First, Sarah, all the hazing has been directed my way. But I'm going to use 5 words rather than 10. It's going to be civics from the Civic Center.
Ah. You've been preparing all week for that, Bob. That's actually pretty good. That was worth the wait. Jeff, wrap it up here. What you got?
Boy, it seems like these priority bills are flying already through the process. The governor's budget has dropped, and we've got new gadflies showing up in committee.
Man, gadflies new to the process. I saw this guy. Yeah, I mean, we'll talk about that later.
David Serdar. Yeah, he's everywhere.
We need new personalities. All right. Let's get into this. As always, I want to start with our crack analyst, Sarah, the policy analyst. What's our data point this week? Last week, I think we talked about seniors and vaccinations. What are we talking about this week?
So this week, I wanted to highlight on some of the recent funding disbursements by the governor through the Rebuild Florida program. So on January 8th, about $20 million was announced for the Rebuild Florida General Support Program. And then a little over a week later, $100 million was announced through the Rebuild Florida Infrastructure Repair Program. And the Rebuild Florida Support Program was launched this past May with the purpose of developing funding and disaster plans on the state and local levels, and about 37 counties, cities, and programs received this funding. And then on the other side of things, 24 communities were awarded the $100 million through the Rebuild Florida Infrastructure Repair Program for infrastructure affected by Hurricane Irma. And the entire list of recipients is included on the Ledge Bulletin.
All right. And look, segue moment here. Eric Poole. Follow up on that. So tell the people, share the good news about what Sarah's talking about.
Yeah, so at the Institute of County Government, we have...
Which is located in the same building.
Located in the same building. In the strategic plan, we have something called signature initiatives, and it's meant to develop partnerships and find other opportunities that we can work on. So something non-education. And so we partnered with the FSU Department of Urban and Regional Planning to do some resiliency assessments in Southeast Florida. It was a long process. We were a co-applicant with them. It's about $358,000 in total. And so we were also awarded as a part of that. So we'll be working with FSU probably for about the next 18 months. And our role will be primarily peer reviewing documents that the evaluation team is putting together, and then it'll culminate in training and best practices for other counties. So,
man, do you get a little bonus for that? Year-end bonus?
No, but we get to peel off some.
We get some, in fact, so ICG will get some administrative reimbursement.
We'll get about between $25,000 and $30,000.
All right. Good job, Eric. Serving the people always from the side of the Institute. All right. Moving on. Tiff, you've been busy So between the Local Government Efficiency Task Force and Access 67, tell us what has transpired since the last time we talked.
Okay, well, I'll start with Access 67. And of course, that's FAC's broadband initiative that we launched recently. And of course, working as partners with DEO. DEO, they have begun having their regional workshops in partnership with the regional planning councils. So those began yesterday, and they're about an hour and a half long workshops. Of course, they're virtual. Yesterday, they were in the Treasure Coast region, which included Indian River, St. Lucie, Martin, and Palm Beach. Today, they had the Appalachia regional meeting, and that included several rural counties: Jackson, Calhoun, Gulf, Gadsden, Liberty, Franklin, Leon, Wakulla, and Jefferson County. They've had a lot of, maybe around 40 to 50 people on the calls. A lot of the providers, AT&T, T-Mobile, Comcast, several others are also participating. So it'll be interesting, the feedback that DEO receives. Also, the director, Dane Eagle, he presented in a committee meeting this week. It was the House Tourism Infrastructure and Energy Subcommittee that he presented in, which is chaired by Representative Brad Drake, who ran the broadband legislation last year. And so basically, as a result of these regional workshops, they're going to have them, like I said, they started yesterday. They're going to go through February 12th. And what they are looking at is basically establishing a 3-phase approach for the implementation of broadband expansion. And again, this is DEO, the Department of Economic Opportunity. So phase 1 would be a feasibility study to specify the nature of the connectivity gap and why it exists. Phase 2, their strategic plan, and they'll assess various strategies of deployment. And then phase 3 basically includes the implementation phase. So anyway, lots of good stuff happening there. Next week, they're going to be very busy. They're going to go into the Emerald Coast on Monday, February 1st, Emerald Coast. Then February 2nd, they'll be in the Southwest Florida region. February 3rd in Central Florida, and then February 4th in Northeast Florida. So what FAC is going to do is target the counties in those regions, and we're going to send information. We always include information about these workshops in our emails, but we're going to send some targeted email messages to those specific counties so they know that they can participate and have a seat at the table when it comes to broadband. Secondly, the Local Government Efficiency Task Force, they met last week. We have good county representation on the task force. As a matter of fact, Carol Whitmore, she's the chair, she's a Manatee County Commissioner, and they have been asking for our input. This last meeting, like I said, last week, we received feedback, and we're going to be reaching out to our county managers to give us an assist with this one. And basically, we're going to be asking for input on reporting required by the state. The state requires a lot of reporting, but we specifically want to know, in the opinion of our counties, the reporting that they wonder about, like the reporting that do not lead to actionable items or changes, or they never receive feedback from the state. Does the report sit on a shelf and collect dust for 15, 20 years? Or
yes, it does. Yeah.
Or is the state actually doing something with those reports? So that's our homework for the task force. And like I said, we'll be reaching out to our county manager group to see what they have to say about that. And we'll be providing that input, basically a list of those reports to the task force.
I think if you look at Eric's bottom left drawer in his desk, you got a lot of those reports, and they might be on that 5 1/4 floppy disk, I think.
Yeah, from 1995. I think I've seen those discs in Eric's office.
He scanned them all in by hand, I think.
I can't find a computer to put them in.
No. I bet Bob's old computer.
That's where the SPSS program is.
Yeah. We find one and we save the world. We find that computer. All right. Hey, Tiff, thanks. Good job this week.
Thank you.
You can come back to work next week, all right?
I'm very efficient.
Yeah. Redhead Jeff, how you doing?
Good. It was a little bit of a slow week this week in the environmental water world. There were a little bit of redos, take twos of presentations. Secretary Valentine came back to give another presentation on the implementation of Senate Bill 712 from last session. But this week, Chris Pettit from FDAC's Office of Ag Water Policy joined to discuss BMP's best management practices. A few updates in ag this week. Holly Bell joined the Senate Committee of Agriculture to give an update on the state hemp program, which is currently expanded to 66.
We have hemp in 66 counties?
Yeah, you're ubiquitous. Hemp is growing, and it's growing fast. We approved that program last April, and within weeks, there were plants in the ground. FACish was the first university to get approved research, to study hemp cultivation and the genetics. So we're going to see a lot of development, a lot of production, new products, CBD, gummies, and then everything in between. Also, they received an update on statewide food programs from Feeding Florida and Feeding Tampa Bay. There's been an increased meal gap that's occurred that's impacting Florida families during the pandemic. The partner agencies highlighted the strategies to distribute, coordinate, and prepare for these crisis events like hurricanes and the pandemic. The projections estimate that 3.6 million Floridians are food insecure, and this includes 1.5 million children. And they see those projections not looking to level off until about 2025.
Right. Then we added something to our guiding principles this year.
We did.
With food insecurity.
We added that to our ag and rural affairs guiding principles back at LegCon in December. As far as bills moving, also there was a piece of legislation on drones that's moving.
Did you almost curse? I think you almost cursed. You said a piece of what? You fixed it.
Piece of legislation on drones.
All right. Yeah, how did that go?
It was amended. It's moving. They removed a provision relating to crowd control. There's a few different bills on drones, so we'll see which one the Senate and House want to move forward in session. Just a couple pieces of legislation that got filed this week. There's a big old preemption that Eddie and I are taking a look at on the preemption of energy infrastructure. This could prevent all repairs, future the deploying of energy infrastructure across the state. We're talking gas, renewables, everything is included in that bill.
Man, so we're going to get to see you.
Senate Bill 856 by Senator Hudson.
We're going to get to see you in attack mode, probably.
That could be. Hopefully that one doesn't make it to committee.
Right. And as of right now, there's no House companion, correct?
That's right. And another bill, House Bill 387 by Representative Fine was filed, and that's related to PACE programs, property assessed clean energy programs. And it's seeking to add septic to sewer conversions to the list of approved projects that can be used in PACE.
Okay. Yeah, no, PACE has been around. We'll see what happens with it. Eric, you got questions for Jeff? No?
No, because you asked it, was there a House bill on Senator Hudson's preemption bill? I mean, that one seems, it's not even in his backyard and where those land use denials took place. So that would just be a huge problem for counties.
Yeah. And again, this is part of the smoke screen. The next couple of weeks, figuring out the why behind all of this stuff and getting down to the nitty gritty or the behind the scenes talk of it. Eddie, what happened in your world? You were working hard. You were typing a lot of emails and watching a lot of stuff. Give us an update, please.
Okay. Let me start with community affairs on Tuesday. They basically heard 3 bills, one of which was extremely controversial. So let me start with the ones that are non-controversial. First was Senator Bruder's Bill 334, which lifts the preemption on the regulation of smoking in public beaches so that we'll be able to regulate smoking on our beaches. There was a lot of discussion by speakers who said that Florida is one of the top states having cigarette butts on its beaches.
I heard some of this testimony. Who counts the cigarette butts?
Hey, listen, I used to, when I was in tourism, I was coordinator of our coastal cleanup.
Did you
over
count
in
the
Walton
cigarette?
County.
You have like a little
We
clicker?
counted cigarette butts
Wow. All right.
on the beach.
The
Yep.
other thing, because I wondered that
the
after
Nation
the testimony.
Conservancy heads that up. Yep.
All right. The second question I had, and Eddie, I found this interesting, is there was a lady that testified that said the cigarette butt is actually considered a piece of plastic because it takes like 12, 13 years for it to break down. So those people throwing cigarette butts on the beach, you're just littering with plastic.
That's correct. And I heard that testimony. I was taken aback by it because, most people would think, well, cigarette butts are going to degrade, in a few months, but they don't. It'll take an average of about 12 years for a cigarette butt to actually degrade. So I found that testimony rather interesting and very supportive of the reason to lift the preemption that there is on local governments right now being able to regulate the activities on the beach, especially smoking. The other bill is by Senator Bradley. It is 378. It has to do with payments for construction services. This is another one that passed unanimously, 9-0 out of the committee. Basically, what it does is that it increases the mandatory interest that has to be paid when a local government or a private contractor fails to pay its subs or or in our case, the contractor, the full amount of the invoice for construction services that have been rendered in a given month. And that's outside of the retainage issue. So generally, if you have a good faith dispute.
If Eric owes me $5, does he fall underneath that? Eric, what's 2% of $5?
It's a lot. It's like $1.
It's like 10 cents.
Yeah, I'm supportive of this bill. Just let you guys know. Bob, you were supposed to have that answer first. You're shaking your head like that.
You asked Eric.
Yeah, so the bill passed with little fanfare. It's just increasing that interest rate and making sure that people who knowingly fail to pay subcontractors, suppliers, and subcontractors for work that they've done can be charged with a crime that it's called the misapplication of construction funds. So I learned a little something there. I was unfamiliar with that particular penalty in criminal law. But it also amends that section of law to ensure that it applies across the board to those that knowingly fail to pay for construction services. The most controversial bill, of course, was the Regional Planning Council bill. This is a bill that repeals the 10 regional planning councils that we have in the state. It transfers a lot of their authority over to state agencies, or in some cases, local government. And then it has the bill at the end allows for local governments to get together and reform regional planning councils by interlocal agreement pursuant to Chapter 163. So the argument, of course, was made that by the sponsor and some of the supporters in the committee of the legislation was that, We're getting rid of a layer of bureaucracy, which is a good thing. We are saving counties money, and we are allowing the reformulation of the reconstituting of these RPCs in a way that is more attuned to what the local community needs are. Of course, there was a lot of testimony about why the bill was not a good idea, and actually calling on the committee members to not approve the bill. We had 3 commissioners who spoke against the bill. Commissioner Doug Smith from Martin County, who talked about the different projects in Martin County where the Treasure Coast RPC has been an excellent partner. We had Baker County Commissioner and Commission Chair Jimmy Anderson, who spoke about how the Northeast Florida RPC works with rural communities and what it means for rural communities to have a partner like a regional planning council who can provide a lot of services that they cannot budget for and provide themselves. And lastly, we had Indian River County Commissioner Peter O'Brien, who focused in on economic development and the fact that RPCs in the last 5 years have brought in more than $138 million to our constituents, and what that means in terms of jobs, in terms of economic prosperity, and that is a focal point of the regional planning councils, who are economic development districts. In addition to that, there were several other environmental and planning organizations that spoke against the bill. But in the end, the committee approved the bill. It was on a 6-3 vote, and it next goes to the Judiciary Committee that is chaired by Senator Brandis.
Okay. Real quick, Eric, you've been here 18 years. You've worked with RPCs from the FACT perspective. Comments on this one?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just, from my perspective, I mean, I was first introduced to RPCs when I was a graduate student over at the University of West Florida, and we were doing an impact fee study while I was at the Center for State and Local Government. So I had to go to the West Florida Regional Planning Council to learn about roads. And so, I mean, I've got a long history of working with them. When I was in Bay County, the RPC served as the transportation modelers for the MPO, in fact, for all the MPOs from Bay County to Escambia. But what they do is a lot more than that. They lost their regulatory powers years ago. So they don't review DRIs. They are allowed to provide comments on comp plan amendments, but so are other state agencies. But they also do all the hurricane evacuation modeling for the state. So that's funding from the Corps of Engineers. They do all the hazmat work that's required under the Community Right to Know Act. They do transportation planning for small cities and counties. I'm not talking about regional, but just small transportation planning. They do grant writing. And what's interesting about them is that they're basically a low-cost consultant for these small communities that don't have staff to write grants, to do comp plan amendments, and they just are able to leverage their overhead and financial resources internally to make them very cost-effective for these local governments. So Ron Book talked about a lot of this stuff and mentioned that, which I totally agree with, is because these are statutory creatures, they, I think, are able to draw down these monies. They are a known entity to EDA, SBA, Corps of Engineers, other state agencies. They're just a known element. If you dissolve them and then try to regroup them, I mean, I think good luck trying to win over a federal agency to get a grant. So I can't figure out, we'll figure it out at some point what the deal is, but
this is another one with the smoke screen.
It's a smoke screen.
What's the real story? Why? And just for our members, on behalf of Eddie and Eric, I think our next step as FAC is to do some digging to find out that real why, get behind the curtain, find out the real why of who's driving this and why they're pushing this. There's no House companion, so we got a little bit of time to figure it out, and then we can formulate a position and go from there. I mean, I think I know what our position is going to be, but there's some questions where we got to find the right answers to, so we can have a solid argument.
And Davin, let me just mention one thing on the transportation front. With respect to the RPCs, there's apparently, 5 of them that serve as staff to the MPOs in some of these smaller areas. So if you repeal those RPCs, it's going to have a great impact on projects in those areas. And because these small communities will not have the staffing that they need to do all of the functions that are currently done by those RPCs on behalf of those MPOs. So that was something that was raised, but as a great impact that can't be remedied by the repeal.
And I think someone made a comment that, well, the department DOT can do that work. I don't think under federal law they can. There's a reason MPOs exist, and it is to provide the bottom-up planning. So they either have the resources to have their own staff to do the long-range planning, or they, contract it out. They can't give it to the DOT. DOT sits as a partner with them, but the idea is that the MPOs independently develop those plans and provide them to the department. The department can decide whether it's going to fund a project or not. But anyway.
That's correct.
Moving to the money world, it's a big week for somebody. Mr. McKee.
Today was while we're recording it on Thursday, the governor's budget dropped. Governor released his budget recommendations to the legislature. They were required 30 days before the start of session. He did it with a few days to spare, 1 working day to spare. For a general overview of the budget, the budget is increased over the adopted Appropriations Act for 2021. It's up 3.6% increase for a total budgeted amount of $96.6 billion. More than half of the increased expenditures are related to COVID-19 pandemic response or the impacts from the COVID-19 pandemic on Florida. And we're going to, by the time you see this tomorrow, you should have received a much more detailed analysis on the governor's budget.
Thank you for that. Bob, are you trying to tax the internet?
There is an Internet Tax Freedom Act. So at the federal level, so we are preempted on any taxation of internet access. However, goods sold across the internet can be subject to local and state sales taxes. Florida is hearing the bill. It passed in committee, Senate Bill 50 by Senator Gruters, passed the Commerce and Tourism Committee unanimously by an 11-0 vote that would put those similar standards in Florida to provide notice to businesses out of state when they would have to collect and remit sales tax.
All right, listen, I promise next week, Tonette, you are going first. So, Ms. Graham, what happened in health, safety, and justice and COVID this week?
SB 72 by Senator Brandes was heard for its first committee meeting in Senate Judiciary on Monday. This is the bill that gives legal protections for businesses, educational entities, governmental entities, and religious institutions against COVID-19 liability claims. For presentations, I think it's all safe to say that Director Jared Moskowitz has become a Florida celebrity and household name when it comes to this pandemic. He gave a stellar presentation on yesterday morning in the Senate Select Committee on Pandemic Preparedness and Response. DEM also introduced the COVID sniffing dog in the committee meeting on yesterday. His name is Cobra. So
Cobra.
If you go to the state ELC now, you don't have to get it swabbed. The dog is supposed to be able to sniff the virus on you.
The dog has been trained to...
The dog has been trained.
Okay, but here's the question, Eric. If the dog sniffs you and you have COVID, what does the dog do next?
He sits next to you.
Because that's the real question. Tonette, what does a dog do if you have COVID? It barks or does it bite you or what? I mean,
it'll come up. It'll circle around you if you have COVID. Besides its trainers, if the dog comes up to you and stays around you for more than 5 seconds, it has detected that you have COVID. Then the dog was in the night building yesterday morning for the presentation.
Did he circle?
Go back and watch it on the Florida Channel.
Did he circle anybody? I got to watch this.
He circled the director.
Yeah.
Do they train these dogs to sniff anything that starts with the letter CO?
Listen, that's not my ministry. I have no idea. Nobody, thankfully, asked those questions on yesterday.
That was a really smart joke, man. That was good.
Mossy was just said, if the dog sniffs you and circles around you, you're positive. Go quarantine.
All right. And for those out there that remember, Eric does a lot on the education front. Last week, he provided services to all of our newly elected county commissioners. He did about 4 or 5 days worth of programming, wrapped into about 2 days. And then he's been around this week helping us, weighing in and doing stuff. Your reflection on committee week number 2?
Predictable.
Yeah. All right. You've seen about 18 or 19 of these. So.
Predictable.
All right. That's good. Sarah, what do you think? This is sort
I
of,
would say
as a grown-up, this is like your first session.
A heavy multitasking week.
All right. But you're good at it. You get to come back to work next week. Congratulations.
And I'm thankful.
Jeff, what do you have?
This week it was electric.
All right, that's good. That's energy. You're going to be preempted from having an electric week. Better get it in while you can. Tonette.
I'll say a gracious haze.
Okay, right. Yeah, no, you had a lot on your plate too with COVID and HB1. All right, this time I'm choosing Bob over Eddie, only to make Bob feel good. Eddie, you really deserve it, but we need Bob to come back next week, so I gotta throw him a bone here.
Apologies in advance, but the best reflection of the week was Tonette's glasses.
Man, Bob, you are on fire. You're on fire. That's pretty good.
Listen, these Zoom and committee meetings are killing me. I got to make sure I keep 2020, so I had to invest in some blue lights. And I really wanted to see if they work, but they do. They do. It's working.
Right. The goal is to maintain in 2020 in 2021. See, I did that. All right, Eddie, bring it on home with your reflections of the week.
I still stick by my original word, which is controversial.
Yeah.
That's what I'm sticking with.
All right, and here's what I'm going to share. My last word, I'm sharing a pet peeve. And Eric, I want your input on this. And this is to my members. Here's a pet peeve I've developed over the last 3 or 4 years. And you saw it a lot. Speaking of HB1 and 69 testimonies, over 2 hours of testimony. But for the young folks, but for my members, here's what it really ticks me off, and I'm going to advise you not to do this. You're an elected official. If you come to Tallahassee, if you go to the podium, do not read from your cell phone or iPad. You're elected because you can speak, you have some oratorical skills, you can deliver a cohesive thought without scrolling on your iPhone and looking down and not making eye contact with the people you're actually trying to convince. So, Tonette, Jeff, Sarah, a lot of your generation thinks it's cool to get up in public comment and read the iPhone. And then, you know what? The phone screen goes blank. You got to type in your code again. And then, you know what? You're on a 60-second time. You spend 30 seconds trying to get into your phone. Then you lose your place versus if you know you got a minute to 3 minutes or maybe longer. Put together, keep some cohesive thoughts. Keep it clear and short and concise. And go look people in the eye and try to influence them. That's what we do for them. So what? If you got to take a 4x6 note card, put down some bullet points on it. But reading from the phone, reading from an iPad, that's not going to cut it for me ever. And a lot of our members. And so our members as elected officials, I advise you not to do it. Because you're not just representing yourself, you're representing your county and the people they elected you, which is probably a large amount of population and fact. And so my guys aren't going to do it. And I advise as members, as representing the association and your fellow commissioners across the state, I advise you not to do it. You guys, how did you get elected? You looked somebody in the eye, you shook their hand and asked them for a vote. And the same thing up here. All right. And that's my pet peeve. Eric, what do you think? Am I off? Am I being
No,
too
I
harsh?
noticed that yesterday when they were talking on HB1, people were looking at it's not a good look. It's not effective.
Yeah. It's
Just speak from your heart.
So, that's what I got for this week. And as always, as we leave out, I promised I was going to do this every week. But I want to let all our members know that it's not the critic who counts. It's not the person who points out how the strong person stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the person who is actually in the arena. And that's you guys out there in all 67 counties. Sarah, Bob, Eddie, Jeff, Tonette, Eric, Tiffany, I thank you guys. And we will do this again next week. And we'll see you then.